Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams, and today's video is going to be an overview of all of the concealers I tried in the past year. I realize this is 75% of my concealer collection, so let's just get to it. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. If you are familiar with my content, then you know that I like doing roundup review videos once I've tried enough of a single product. I like doing this with foundations very often, with eyeshadow palettes, and I decided to do it with concealer just for funsies as well, because I realized at the end of 2023 that I hadn't really been serious about trying any new concealers for a hot minute. I had my favorites, I liked them, I was going back to them, but there were so many new concealer formulas on the market that intrigued me and that a lot of people were hyping up that I was like, let's find out, are these worth the hype? Yes or no? There's a lot of stuff here from affordable to more high-end and luxury stuff, Sephora brands, things in a pot, loads of different formulas. So let me talk you through it from the least favorite to my most favorite, because that's the order in which I'm going to be discussing these in. So in the past year, I tested out a total of 21 different concealers, and that was even more than I had expected. There are a couple in here that I knew I was gonna declutter, but I kept them around so I could do this video, and I kept putting this video off because I kept finding concealers that I wanted to try, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it in December. So some of these I think I already reviewed over a year ago, but I will have a full list of all the links to reviews with these products in the description box down below, because in case you don't know, I review these things on a blog. I know, I'm very old school, and that's where you can see swatches, what things look like on my face, and I give you the full lowdown. So if you want to see any images of that, then you can just go over there, because with concealer, I find it weird to compare shades, but I did do a video a while ago where I talked about my top 10 favorite cool tone concealers. So if it's shades you're looking for, I would recommend that video. Today it's much more about formula and wear time for me rather than the shade match, because shade matches and me, we are not the best of friends, but we'll get to that. Also, another disclaimer before we get started, there's a lot of affordable stuff in the bottom half of this ranking. And that's not because I don't like affordable things. It's because a lot of the affordable stuff I tried didn't go with my skin type. So a lot of the more affordable things I tried were too drying for me, and that's why they're in the bottom half. I just prefer something that's hydrating and dewy, because I do have dry eyes. I have some fine lines as well on my under eyes. I am 40 years old, so there's no escaping that. So I just like something that plumps up that area and makes it look hydrating and fresh. And a lot of the more affordable things I tried were a little bit more matte leaning. I do have a couple of affordable things in my top 10 though, so stay tuned for that. But because sometimes people only watch like the start of the video and then they're like, oh, you don't like affordable things. I do like affordable things. It's just that for some reason, when it comes to complexion products, the drugstore can do really nice things, but they're harder to find, and they're harder to find in a formula I love in my shade. That's why they get ranked a little bit lower, just so you know. And in the number 21 spot, this is something I pulled from my declutter pile, something I kept so I could talk about it in this video, is the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum. And there's only one reason why this is ranked so low. It's the packaging. This has a pump. It's the only pump concealer in this entire lineup today, and it just is so incredibly wasteful because I cannot get a half pump with this. I can't just get a little bit of this product. No, I can only do a full pump. Only do a full pump. And if you know how much concealer I use, I literally use like 5 dots of concealer around my entire face. That's how much concealer I use. I like to go in with a light layer, because if I use too much, it looks dry, cakey, heavy, and it starts to look really obviously makeup-y. With this, I always get so much product. It's incredibly wasteful. What shade is this in? Do I know? It's in shade Fair. So the shade match was okay. I like the formula well enough, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this up in a jiffy if I keep using this every single day. Plus, it was discontinued really quickly. So there's that. So I'm not even sure if you can still find this thing. Next up is by Collection. This is a brand that's sold in the UK. This is the Lasting Perfection Hydrating Serum Concealer. I bought it in shade 2 Porcelain, which looks really light, but it actually oxidizes quite a bit. So the shade match was all right for me. I don't love really light concealers on myself anymore because it just doesn't look right. I actually prefer them to be a touch more yellow because it means the yellow tone color corrects my redness a little bit better. So that's why I do like a smidge of yellow in a lot of my concealer shades. And I kind of bought this for nostalgia because Collection, who remembers? Who remembers the obsession, the chokehold that the Collection, the original Collection concealer had on the online beauty community, like around 2010. Like if you followed any UK beauty YouTuber at like 15 years ago by now, everybody was talking about it. Everybody was. It was around that time that I first started traveling to London more regularly. So I had a couple of them. And let me tell you, I loved that concealer to pieces. It was my favorite. I used them up. I would buy them again. I was a fan of that concealer. So when I saw they were doing it in a hydrating version, I was like, right, you're coming home with me. I love something that's more hydrating nowadays. This is pretty full coverage and a little bit more mattifying when I was trying it. When I was first trying it, I was in my 20s. My skin has changed a little bit since then, and so I need slightly different things. And it just wasn't a success because this was dry, cakey, heavy, and all the things I don't like in a concealer. It was far too mattifying, even though the name says it is hydrating. It wasn't hydrating on my dry, crepey skin at all. And one of my biggest pet peeves, I always put a little bit of concealer right here next to my nose. And which is the area of my face that gets the driest and the flakiest in the wintertime? My nostrils. Like this entire area becomes really ratchy looking. So as long as I use something that's hydrating, it looks okay. I use anything matte on top and it instantly looks terrible. So this was not a good one. It didn't look right on me. And the shade, dare I say it, was actually a touch on the light side for me. So there's that, because there's even a shade lighter than this. If you're super pale and you like something that's more mattifying, maybe check out Collection if you are in the UK. Similar vein here, the Luminate Blur Concealer. This is their long wear concealer. I got it in shade light. I think I bought this from Notino together with some other Luminate products that I wanted to try. Or maybe I bought it after I tried the foundation that I loved. Because there is a Luminate product that I love and adore, which is a little bit difficult to find online by now. It may have been discontinued, actually. It's one of their foundations. And so I decided to try a concealer. But this, far too mattifying. Far too mattifying for my liking. This was not good on my dry under eyes, let me tell you. Within 2 hours, it looked like I was 20 years older than I actually am. So this was not a good look. So therefore, the Luminate Blur Concealer is also in the bottom half of this ranking. Sadly, I have to report to you that the Kiko Full Coverage Dark Circle Concealer in shade 1 suffered from the same thing as the other two. This was lovely. It is a really good concealer. If you like full coverage and mattifying concealers, you're gonna love this. This was a touch too yellow for me. The skin tone concealer I have from the brand, which is currently in my Shop My Stash, because I'm trying to use it up because I love it that much. It's lighter and less yellow than this is. And that's in shade 2. I don't understand. Just be consistent with your shade range throughout your entire makeup line, please. Can we start doing that? That would be a good thing. But that wasn't the case here. So even though I got the lightest shade, it was still too dark and a little bit too yellow for me. And again, far too mattifying. It doesn't say anything about this being matte. It was just more coverage than what I normally go for and just a little bit too obviously makeup-y and just not my vibe. So I think this is going to be one that I would declutter in 2025. I'm going to be filming those in the springtime in case you're curious. But yeah, this was not for me. It's probably good for someone else. If you like matte full coverage and you don't mind this shade, it can be lovely. It's a good product. It just wasn't for me. Also at the bottom, this thing from Kruidvat. Kruidvat is a Dutch drugstore brand. I decided to try a load of makeup from the name brand that they do. It's really affordable. It's very cheap and cheerful. And there were a couple of products in that line that not only I liked, but that are used up by now because I like them so much. But the Stay With Me concealer, wasn't good. This is the long-lasting anti-pollution complex concealer in shade 12C Fair Blush. The shade in a swatch looked beautiful, but this darkened. It became so orange as it dried down. It was not a good look, let me tell you. And it was too mattifying. So again, it didn't look right on my skin's texture. And also a little bit for the shade. It is a good formula, I think, but this is the Essence Correct and Conceal Under Eye Brightening Concealer, and it's in the light shade. It is a lot lighter though than you might expect. It looks really peachy in the tube, but on me it's like a very light baby pink. And I like that, I really, really do, but I have other light pink things in my collection that I would reach for over this. And with this, I found that because it was a liquid, it didn't hide my under eye circles that in a way that I know other color correctors can do. So it wasn't really doing the job. It was a little bit too drying for me as well. So that's why this Essence Under Eye Brightener was just a little bit gimmicky and a little bit limited in its usage, because I'm never ever going to concealer that's like, I'm never going to use a concealer just on my under eyes and then use another concealer for the rest of my face. No, I hardly ever do that. Remember that I said we're going down from 21 to 1? Well, this is number 15, so we're in the top 15. This was a little bit better than the Kiko Milano one, but it's very similar to the Kiko Milano one, and it's by Peri Para. They are a K-beauty brand. This is their Double Longwear Cover Concealer in shade Pure Ivory 01. Better shade for me than the Kiko one, for sure. It is a little bit too yellow, but this was, again, far too heavy, far too drying, and far too mattifying for my liking. So this entire, like anything that's not in the top 10 kind of goes into that vein, it seems. But we're going to get some different flavors coming up for sure. Was it good? Yes, I think a lot of people can actually like it. It just wasn't right for my skin type. And then the only reason why the next product is ranked this low in the number 14 spot is because I forgot I had tried it. If I hadn't gone back to my blog to see what was the cutoff point for when I started trying all these concealers, I would have forgotten this was even in my house. Even though it's a solid product. But if you're not that memorable, I'm terribly sorry, Ariana, but then your products go into the bottom half of a ranking. I'm talking about REM Beauty, and this is one of their concealers. Let me look up the entire name. It's just called Concealer. I have it in Light 5N. The shade range of this is fantastic. This was launched before they came out with the foundations though. So when I bought it, I think I bought it in Sephora, not this year, but a year before. When the Champs-Élysées Sephora was closed because they were like redoing something. And the makeup artist there was recommending this to be used all over the face. Wouldn't do that. But it was stunning. I was obsessed with it when I first started trying it. I think for like a month straight when I first had it, all I wanted to use was this. So it is a solid product. It's just, if I think of my potted concealer, like the first thing that comes to mind is the Glossier, because it's far dewier, far more lightweight. This is leaning towards a heavier side, but this is definitely like pushed up a couple of notches on the ladder because I really enjoy the shade of this. The formula can be manipulated quite easily because it is in a pot and it didn't dry out really quickly. So this is nice. I need to start using it again. But I think also because I was testing out so many new things, I wasn't really focused on going back to old things. So I don't think that would necessarily be like like straight up, I'm going to declutter this kind of product. Because I think in 2025, I'm just going to focus on trying to use some of these up. That's the plan. Is there a concealer on my wish list at the second? No. But I'm hoping Lisa Eldridge comes out with a concealer. So if she comes out with a concealer, then I may want to try it. You know what I mean? Milk Makeup. This is the Future Fluid Concealer in 2C. And this I don't think you can see really well. We're also having a storm at the minute. So if the lighting is weird, I do apologize because the weather is freakish today. Let me tell you, it has been for days now. But this way I think you can see the shade perhaps a little bit better. It's really, really light and really, really pink. Here's the thing. The shade of this is actually a touch too light for me. I can only use it in the dead of winter. It is really pretty on. However, I need to be very careful with how much I use of this, because if I use too much or if I apply too thick of a layer, it looks weird instantly. This is the kind of concealer that looks best if you dot it on, first tap it in with your finger, and then blend it in with a brush. And then if you think you need more coverage, to go in with another, you know, it's really one of those like, you need to look what it does and then you can apply more kind of product. Do I have time for that in the morning before I get ready for work? I don't. So I'm just going to be very honest. Is it a nice product? Yes. This is a really, really pretty, more pink toned color as well. So if that's something you're looking for, this may be a line to look into. I do remember that the reason why because again, I bought this from Sephora in France. The reason why the makeup artist used this on me and not one of the other shades, because everything else in the line was too dark and yellow. Even shades down, I believe. Was a bit of a weird shade range in this one. But this one works really well for me, and I'm glad I have it. This is not going anytime soon, and I definitely want to get more use out of it. Remember when I said that there were going to be affordable things that were a little bit higher up? I did really enjoy this. This is the Wonder Match Lumi Concealer from Eveline Cosmetics. That's the brand. They are a Polish drugstore brand, and I have it in shade 10 Vanilla. I tried one of their concealers before, but it was far too dark, and so I made a point of trying another one of their foundations actually earlier in the year for a drugstore foundation review that I was doing, and then I bought this, like the matching foundation to this. And I was like, you know what, I can also try their concealer. This was lovely. It matches the foundation formula quite well. It's hydrating. The shade is all right for me, but it oxidized and it became darker as I was wearing it throughout the day. So I didn't love it for that reason, but it is pretty. It's definitely something that I could see myself going back to and using up at some point. I liked it enough to at least be able to get more use out of it, now that I've tried all these new things. And I feel similarly about the e.l.f. Hydrating Camo Concealer. I have mine in shade Fair Beige. This is a good concealer. It's very, very solid. You can see I've gotten some use out of this for sure. But here's the thing. Like the Lumi Concealer from Eveline Cosmetics, this is not exactly my match because it just darkens so much throughout the day that I don't love it. So it looks good initially, and then I look in the mirror, and especially at work where we have these harsh office lights, there's just always something about this that just doesn't look quite right. Can I get more use out of this? Yes, for sure. But the original Camo Concealer was far too mattifying for me, and this, I feel, isn't hydrating enough compared to some of the other things that I still have coming up. I just wanted this to be more living up to its name, you could say. So that's why the e.l.f. is a little bit further down in the ranking. But a drugstore concealer that made it into the top 10 of my ranking is one that I tried quite recently, but I feel it is a dupe for a more expensive one that I tried first and that I like a little bit better. The L'Oreal True Match Serum Concealer, that's what it's called. Radiant Serum Concealer. I have mine in shade, where does it say? Oh, on the top, 1R Light Clair. This is a solid one. I use it in my drugstore dupes video that I did a couple of weeks ago for you. This is a lovely concealer, and as I was using it, I was like, this reminds me so much of the YSL All Hour. So if you like the YSL, but you don't want to shell out the money, then this is of course going to cost you a lot less. However, here where I live in the Netherlands, this thing is $15.99. I bought it in Germany for $11.99, which is a much better price for a drugstore concealer. So yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to find that price point worth it. Is it still less than the YSL? For sure. And we all know that L'Oreal does some great dupes for more expensive things because L'Oreal, the company, owns so many makeup brands, and L'Oreal, the makeup line, therefore has a lot of things that L'Oreal has actually produced in much more expensive products. So yeah, lovely. It is, shade-wise, it's ever so slightly too peach for me. Ever so slightly too peachy toned. If this were actually like more rosy toned, like the name suggests, 1R. I remember in the True Match line, I used to be like 1R or 1N as well over here. So that's why I went with that shade. So I think shade-wise, I perhaps could have done better. Now that I've looked at it online, there should be lighter shades. However, I've never seen them in stores. So there's a catch there as well. So L'Oreal True Match is a really, really solid product though. And this may come as a bit of a shock to some people, but I didn't like the Haus Labs concealer as much as the next person. Love the Triclone foundation. I also like this a lot. It's kind of like what I had going on at the bottom half of the ranking. I also struggled very much to rank these at the top of the ranking because I think my entire top 10 is like pretty much on point formula-wise. It's just like, this has a slightly better shade match for me, and this is the one I want to go back to, and that's sort of how I ranked this. I have mine in shade 3, Fair Rosy. So it is more pinky toned. It does have a really nice shade match. It has a lovely formula. I really enjoy how much innovation is in these skin tech products that Haus Labs does. You can feel the difference compared to other concealers, especially that are far cheaper than this. I definitely feel you can tell the difference. But here's the thing. There's not a fiber in my being that is like, you know what? I've now tried 21 concealers and the first one I want to use again is the Haus Labs. That's not how I feel. But it is a solid product. So I was like, you know, where does it go in the ranking? And I was like, my gut tells me it needs to go here just because I would pick the things that are in my top 5 to use up before I ever go back to this. So, yeah, but it is a good product. Fenty Beauty, we're even. Very similar explanation to why this ended up being on this spot in the ranking as the Haus Labs. This is the We're Even concealer in 150N. This is lovely. The shade is actually pretty good for me. A lot of people, when I bought this, were surprised that I went with the shade I actually went with, but I picked this up in store. So I was able to swatch all of the lighter shades of this that were in the more neutrally cool tone category, and 140N, which is a shade a lot of you thought I was going to be, pulled darker on me when it dried down. So I went with 150 because it looked a little bit more pink and it didn't oxidize on me as badly. Because this is what I do when I go into a store and I swatch makeup. I will swatch it on the back of my hand and I'll make another round to the store to see what it looks like 5 minutes later. And then I preferred this shade on me over the 140. So that's why I ended up going with this. It was successful. However, this was in my Shop My Stash together with another concealer that is going to be in the top 5 because I just wanted to reach for the other concealer that's still coming up over this every single time. So that's why I'm saying this is a similar explanation as the Haus Labs. The things that are currently in my top 5 are the things I would choose over this. But this is a really, really good product. It's very solid. Fenty Beauty is finally doing products that work for dry skin. I have that foundation they came out with, which I still want to try to see if that's actually good. Because my struggle with Fenty Beauty complexion products has been that they're far too mattifying and that they're very aimed at oily skin people, which isn't me. So that's why I have sometimes been disappointed with Fenty Beauty in the past. And then to round up the top 10, because this is number 6 on the ranking, is another drugstore product. And so many of you were saying how you love this as well. when I mentioned it in a recent video. This is the Maybelline Superstay Active Wear Concealer. I have mine in shade 5. Apparently Angelica Nukvist loved this as well. It's getting hard to find. I'm not sure if they've discontinued this, but this is lovely. It's very, very hydrating. It stays put so well. And shade 5 is one of the best matches I have ever found in the drugstore for a concealer. It's just really, really good. It's a very solid pick. It sees me through every situation. This is another one where I'm like, yeah, this is why this is higher up than the House Labs and the Fenty Beauty, because I would pick this over those other two. I just would. I just would. I'm going to be very honest with you. And that's also why we're kicking off the top 5 in the number 5 spot with another affordable pick. This is the same, I always mess up the name of this, the Cover Perfection Tip Concealer in shade 05. Tried this before. I used to own another one of these, but it was in a darker shade that didn't work for me. The thing was, when I first purchased that concealer, these lighter shades weren't available on YESSTYLE. They must have sold out, and this is something that YESSTYLE sometimes does. Like, if they don't have something in stock, they will just remove the listing from their website. Happens all the time with them, I found. But a lot of you were telling me when I was saying, oh, I love the formula of this concealer, but the shade is just completely off. And so many of you were saying, what do you mean? There are so many lighter shades available. And I was like, oh, really? So when I placed another order on YESSTYLE a while ago, I saw that it was stocked in 0.5, and I bought it, and I love it. In fact, that Kiko Skin Tone Concealer I already mentioned, when I was putting my shop my stash together for December, it was between this and the Kiko Milano to decide which one I was going to use up first. And I decided to go with the Kiko Milano first because it has seen more use than this has. But this is definitely going to be a contender for my use up pile for 2025. Granted, it's small, it's dinky, it's easy to carry around. I love having these small concealers. That's also why I get so much use out of my Kiko concealer, because they fit really well into a makeup bag when you're traveling. So you never overstuff things. I love it. This doesn't come with a whole lot of product, of course. I don't think I can read that here. No, I can't. But it's small, it's dinky, it gets the job done. And 0.5 was a much better shade for me. If I do use it up, this would also be on the repurchase pile. Like, I would repurchase this, for sure, for sure. Number 4, this is the concealer that was in my Shop My Stash together with the Fenty Beauty Wear Even. It's the Estee Lauder Futurist concealer in shade 1C, 1C. Love this. Really, really liked it, especially together with the Futurist Hydrarescue foundation, which I'm currently trying to use up. This is the concealer version of that foundation. That's all I have to say about it. And that is one of my favorite foundations of all time. So that's really nice, hydrating, and you only need a little bit of it to make it work. With this, I love the applicator of this because it really fits into that tear duct area of your under eye area, you know? Fits really well, a lovely shade. It's pulling ever so slightly yellow. That's a theme that I have found with all the 21 concealers that I've tried this year, is that most of them, the entire line pulls yellow. Just the entire thing, across the board. Every shade they do is yellow, which is another reason why I didn't pick this up when it dropped, because I don't know what shade I am in Estee Lauder unless I go abroad. Because over here in the Netherlands, these lighter shades are not for sale. They're just not there. It's crickets. So I picked it up when I was in London. I did a couple of swatches, decided this was going to be the shade, and then I decided to pick it up, and I have fallen in love with it, and this is definitely a contender to go onto the list for a makeup use-up pile in the future for sure, because I could not stop using this when I was using it in November. I had a choice between the Fenty Beauty and this, and I kept reaching for this every single time. Once I started using this one, I was like, right, I'm sold. I want to use this every single day. But one thing I also really liked was my Gucci concealer, and this is one that I tried very early on in the year. Can I see the shade name of this? This is like 17N or something like that. It's just the Gucci concealer. Ooh, this is very small. No, it's 17W, which is why this is a weird shade range. Another one that I picked up in store because I couldn't figure out my shade. Turns out within the Gucci line, just like within the House Labs foundation line, by the way, the shades that are dubbed W, warm, are the ones with the slightly pinker undertones. They're still yellow. The entire range is still incredibly yellow. But the things with an N and a C on my skin tone were far more orange and yellow than this was. This pulled really nice and neutrally, a little bit more pinky peach, and that's why it worked. I loved this thing when I was trying it in the springtime. It was the only concealer I wanted to reach for. It was beautiful on the skin. The only thing with Gucci makeup is that everything is very heavily fragranced. So if you don't like that kind of thing, and you don't want floral scents in your concealer, then maybe stay away from this. It didn't give me any irritations or anything like that. It worked really well for me. I used it for weeks on end. It lasted really well, and I really love this product. And that brings me to the top 3, my YSL All Hours. This is another one where I was like, I can't stop using you. I can't stop using you. This was the only thing I wanted to use. I think once I had it in my Shop My Stash, I kept it in my Shop My Stash for another month to use more of it. That's how much I loved it. This is the All Hours in LC1. This comes with a ton of product. It's like 11 milliliters or something crazy like that. I can't read it on the sticker here, but I remember that from the review that this comes with heaps of product. So yes, it's a pricey product. And yes, the entire shade range is very yellow. I had to check this out 3 times in a store to even be able to figure out which one I needed. But I like it. This is the kind of yellow tone where I feel I can still get away with it because it does enough, like there's enough yellow to neutralize the redness in my cheeks and on my nose. And that's also one of the reasons why I use a concealer. It's not only to cover up dark circles, but also to cover up a little bit more redness on my face that my foundation doesn't cover. And this has been lovely for it. The name of the All Hours line, it holds true to that as well. This lasts all day without issues, no creasing. It looks hydrating. Like I put this on all day and then go to a workout class and it doesn't even look like I put my makeup on just that minute, and it's been on there all the time. This is some good stuff. It's some really, really good stuff. I just wish they did a better shade range. And because the YSL line doesn't have such a good shade range, I'm actually ranking the Natasha Denona High Glam Concealer a little bit higher. If you saw my concealer video that I did a while ago with all of my favorite, like more cool tone leaning concealers, this made an appearance, and this was the most pink toned out of all of them. I have it in shade R2, yes, R2, and this is lovely. It's very similar in formula compared to like the Gucci and the YSL and the House Labs, and like I all feel like all of those concealers that came out in like the past year are all very similar in what they can do. And I love something dewy and hydrating. So this was the year, like the past year and a half to 2 years, all those concealer releases we got and that I've now tested out, I just love. Give me a hydrating concealer and I'm happy. And this was hydrating, it was lovely. This is the most pink toned of them all. So if you're looking for a really good pink undertoned concealer, then try the Natasha Denona range. Again, a range I would recommend if you can to check it out in store because the numbers don't line up. R2, let me phrase this right. R2, like some of the other shades lower than this were warmer and darker than this one was. So it's another one you do need to go into store for to swatch it and to really see what your shade might be. And just don't go by a shade name with these lines because they're making things even more confusing than they already were. But my number one favorite is one that I'm actually really close to using up. I think if I put my mind to it in 2025, this can be a quick, easy use up. You can't see it anymore, but if I leave it sitting out in my makeup collection for my Shop My Stashes, I can like see the doe foot moving around in this thing, so there isn't a lot of product in here anymore. And it's the Tower 28 Swipe On Concealer in 3cc. That's the shade name of it. This is lovely. This is very hydrating. And one of the reasons why I got so much use out of it already is because this was the concealer I would have in my collection when I was testing out of these concealers. All of these concealers to have something in my drawer that I could fall back on. So whenever there was a concealer like that was too mattifying, I was like, I'll reach for this again. So I have been getting a lot of use out of this on the down low, even though it wasn't like fully selected in my makeup collection. But I've been going back to this all the time. I love it. And because Tower 28 is clean beauty, I also knew I had to try and make my way through this really, really quickly, because this doesn't have as many preservatives in as some of the other concealers I already showed you. So I knew if I wanted to get my bang for my buck, this is something I had to go through pretty quickly. And so I prioritized this for sure. And I think at the start of 2025, I can definitely put this in a use up pile. So this is like, I don't really do project pans, but if you follow my Shop My Stashes, you know exactly what I'm using. And this month of December, I've selected products deliberately to try and hit pan or use them up. Not sure if it will work, but if you want to stay tuned on what products I'm actually using and what I'm getting more use out of and products I go back to, then my Shop My Stash videos are the ones to watch. And that's where all of these have made an appearance. And then I review things throughout that month over on the blog. And then whenever I feel I've tried enough to film a video with it, I round it up as a YouTube video. I nicely, like, it's a little network of things. Yeah. So first, you know, oh, she's trying it. Then you know that the review is coming on the blog sometime that month. And then whenever I've tried everything, I let you know how things compare to each other in a video like this. So thank you so very much for joining me here today. Let me know what your favorite concealer is that you've ever tried or that you've tried recently. I would love to know. Thank you so very much for joining me here today. Thumbs it up. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more by me. And then I hope to see you again in my next video very, very soon. Bye-bye.